It was insane. And I was sore. I was hurting. And my legs were sore. I had this dull headache. And I just felt so sorry for myself. And if I was ever going to quit, it was going to be on day 2 of the 102 days. Only 100 days to go. And I kind of had this moment where I thought, what have you done, Sharon? What were you thinking? You can't do this. And then obviously, I have a rhino tattooed on my wrist, and that is my why.
Welcome to the Swedish Wealth Institute Podcast. I'm your host, Danny Wood. Today's episode is one I'm really excited about. I have the pleasure of interviewing Sharon Jessop, who is absolutely amazing and has created such a mission around running for rhinos, raising awareness for conservation, and teaching people how to become an athlete of the mind. Because she's not just a runner, she actually had the discipline to run 102 consecutive half marathons, a world record at the time. The same discipline that goes into that is the same that goes into building a business, a body, a life that doesn't quit when it gets hard, under pressure and without excuses. So if you're an entrepreneur, a leader, an athlete, or just someone who knows you're capable of more, this episode will give you a simple framework for turning motivation into discipline, purpose, and daily action. Because we love spoiling you as a listener, as always, I have a gift for you. Before I share it, is it okay if I ask you a quick favor? If you've been enjoying the Swedish Wealth Institute podcast, do what thousands of people all over the world have already done. Hit follow and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. As a thank you for listening, we have a gift for you, the Wealth Blueprint. It's our step-by-step roadmap to building wealth with clear principles, priorities, and action steps. You can grab it at theswedishwealthinstitute.com. We'll share the links there in the show notes. All right, here we go. Here's Sharon Jessop. Tell me about the hardest moment on this journey where you felt like, I just want to give up.
Oh my gosh, there were actually 2. So first and foremost, during the 2020 runs, when I started on day 1, it was fantastic weather, about 23 degrees, overcast, a little bit drizzly, lots of hype, TV cameras, radio interviews, you name it, big crowd. It was all there. So I ran, had a fantastic, successful run, woke up the next morning, and it was about 11 degrees hotter. So it went from 23 to about 34 degrees overnight.
That's a big difference, yes.
It was insane. And I was sore. I was hurting. With COVID lockdown, all of us, I think, got a little bit unfit and a little bit fat. So I was not quite as fit as I should have been. And my legs were sore. I had this dull headache. And I just felt so sorry for myself. And if I was ever going to quit, it was going to be on day 2 of the 102 days. But lo and behold, I managed to drag myself out, did the run. I still had 2 interviews, in fact, that morning before the run started. And if I look back now, I had these bags under my eyes, and I just looked like someone that was busy dying.
It's only 100 days left, only 100 days to go.
Only 100 days to go. And I kind of had this moment where I thought, what have you done, Sharon? What were you thinking? You can't do this. And then obviously, I have a rhino tattooed on my wrist, and that is my why. And I just thought, you know what? I cannot let these animals down. I cannot. There's no way. Failure is not an option. So I did my run. I made sure that I stayed hydrated, everything that didn't eat me first. Went to bed really early. I think I was in bed by like 7 o'clock that evening, fast asleep, lights out. I slept for about 13 hours. Got up the next morning and I was fine. And then I knew, I've got this.
Your body caught up finally.
Your body just accepts. This is what we're doing for the next 100 odd days. So let's just get the job done. And then in my 2022 running expedition,
you said there were two times, yeah.
Yes, yes. So the 2022 running expedition, when I did the 28 game reserves over 89 days and 1,889 kilometers of running,
Right.
I tripped over really like a bad spot in the tar. And there was this one stone that was standing up. And I got up that morning and I felt tired. My legs felt heavy, and when you have that sort of fuzzy brain feeling.
Yeah.
And I lost concentration for a split second, tripped and literally hit the tar. My chin actually had an abrasion mark on it, both hands
Ouch.
bleeding, both elbows, knees bleeding. And I got up. I first rolled over and sat up and I thought, okay, let me just take a moment. Is anything broken?
Yeah.
Establish that there's no broken bones, no fractures. Okay, I'm good. I can get up. And then I stood there and then the shock set in and I realized,
Yeah.
okay, I'm actually hurt quite badly. My knee was ripped to pieces. It was carnage, blood everywhere. And I thought, well, my support vehicle is about a mile up the road, about 1.6 kilometers, because they stop every 3 kilometers. I have some water, I have something to eat,
All
and that's
right.
how we go. And I've
And
got
now
to get
you
to
got to
the
get
vehicle.
there.
I've got to get there. There's nobody else around me. There's no vehicle I can flag down. And who is going to pick up a woman that's bleeding on the
Well, at
side of
least you
the
weren't in
road?
water. Like the sharks aren't going to smell you and come swimming at least. So that's something.
Absolutely. Thank goodness. And that was on a tar road, so not in a game reserve. So the predators didn't come and find me either.
Yeah. I'm feeling the pain. I had a run like that. I was out running with my old dog and I was just feeling good and I was in full sprint when she leaps in front of my legs and I fall and I like I was 100 meters from my house and I was able to, drag myself there,
Oh
lie
my God.
down and basically pass out from the pain. I mean, I literally passed out from the pain. So for you to be able to go another 1.6 kilometers like that, that must have been absolutely awful.
It was. It was. And when the shock sets in and you start shivering and shaking and you don't know,
Yeah.
should you laugh or cry or
Yeah.
scream or
Well,
faint?
yeah, I mean, your brain completely shuts off and it's like you just don't know what to do with yourself.
Absolutely. But luckily, limping along, I made it to the vehicle. We promptly made a U-turn, went back to Empangeni, about 16 Ks back, went to ER, emergency rooms. And then I went into the queue and I was waiting, and eventually by the time that the doctor tended to me, they couldn't even stitch up my knee. They just had to bandage it because the skin had already started, healing itself. And so,
And the
and I've
swelling
had
and everything. Yeah. Wow.
absolutely, absolutely. And I still remember the doctor, the ER doctor, asked me, am I allergic to anything? And I said, yes. And he looked at me over these little glasses that he was wearing. And I said, I think I'm allergic to falling. He did not even crack a smile.
That's the worst though. Then you feel a new pain of embarrassment and it at least takes the place of the pain of the body. So that
Oh,
that helps.
absolutely.
So
Yes.
but the next day you got up and went back out there and started running again?
Well, I was told by this doctor in the emergency rooms that I should not run at least for the next 3 weeks. And I thought to myself, well, that's not going to work for me, but I'm prepared to take a day or two off. And that's exactly what I did. From Empangeni, we went to Tula Tula Game Reserve. And instead of running there, I participated in the elephant contraceptive program and saw how they darted these elephants and spoke to the vet, a lovely gentleman that explained the whole process, got it all on camera, on film. So that was actually quite epic. And then 3 days later, I was back on the road running, well, limping at first, all bandaged up, and you get these weird looks from people driving past you, like, what is this
What is
interesting
this
woman
half
doing?
mummy doing running across the road here? Yeah.
Absolutely. All bandaged up.
You have done running for rhinos. Tell me how that started.
So many years ago, probably for my sins in a previous life, I by default had a television show that involved travel adventures, conservation, and had a very strong community feel. And I happened to interview one of my favorite humans on earth, a man by the name of Dr. William Folds. And because of my history and background growing up wild in the bush, I'd always had an affinity for the African bush, for rhinos specifically. But when we spoke about rhino conservation, he happened to ask me the question, have I watched the documentary Strip, which is the Afrikaans word meaning to poach? And at that point in time, I had successfully avoided it. But I put on my big curl panties. I rented this documentary. It took me about 4 hours to get through it. And that was really my point where I moved from caring about rhinos to wanting to do something for rhino conservation. And yeah, that's where it all started.
I want to dive into that backstory, but tell me what did you do then? Because this became a whole thing. You're running for rhinos, and you're the rhino lady now. So like, what did you do when you decided, all right, I want to make a difference for rhinos? What was your first step?
Well, my first thing was thinking, what talents have I got, me personally, that can contribute to rhino conservation, that can really elevate the plight of these beautiful animals to the next level. And there's two things I do really well in life. I run and I talk a lot. So at that point in time, I'd also interviewed another gentleman by the name of Wayne Bolton, who had done a cycling expedition for rhino conservation. And I basically teamed up with his nonprofit called the One Land Love It Foundation, or OLLI for short, and decided that I don't like cycling, so I'll be running. And planned this expedition to symbolically link various game reserves in a rhino conservation stronghold. And the idea is not just to run to the game reserve, but to run through the game reserve, thereby creating this invisible barrier for rhino conservation. And that was back in 2018. And it took me a while to actually get to that point. And there were various reasons. One, due to my clumsiness, ended up falling flat on my face and got injured. And following year, so that was going to be in 2019. And then I thought, okay, it's fine. The universe is speaking to me. So maybe I should postpone, which I did. And then I was due to start on the 22nd of September in 2020. And we all know what happened in 2020, right? And there's also a reason for wanting to start always on the 22nd of September, because that is World Rhino Day.
Right.
So yes, 2020 put a bit of a spanner in the works. And there were other plans made at that point in time.
What happened? Keep going.
Right. So obviously, we heard about the rumblings of this whole COVID-19 breakout worldwide. And I think we were very much protected in South Africa in the sense that we did not see any confirmed cases for a very long time. And I remember us running the Addo Elephant Trail Run, the 100-miler, and going up this really big, steep, technical uphill. And there was a gentleman running with us. His name was Kevin. And he mentioned that him and patient zero, who was the first person in South Africa to be officially diagnosed with COVID-19, shared the same doctor. So me, being the verbose person I am, said, oh my gosh, okay, COVID, Kevin, you go run over there. Stay far away from me.
Okay.
Little did we know that a mere 3 weeks later, our entire country was going to be under lockdown,
Yeah.
So that really put a spanner in the works. And with me being this very outdoorsy, very sporty person, it first made me very... Then I became very angry. And when I get angry, I do stupid things, as one does. I organized a whole protest here in my hometown of Port Elizabeth in South Africa about how lockdown affects various businesses, especially small and medium enterprises that can't absorb that financial strain of
Right.
not being able
Yeah.
to trade. And had some threats from the local police that they were going to come and arrest me. By the way, I'm still waiting for that.
Well,
And
let's hope
then,
this doesn't kick that off then.
so, at one point, I made the decision in principle that I need to backtrack here, because me getting so angry and so worked up about something that I have zero control about is really not a healthy situation for anybody. It doesn't serve me. It doesn't serve my community. It doesn't serve the rhinos. So as one does, Google then becomes your best friend, right? And I started Googling, what can I do? At that point in time, we had a 3-hour window period in the mornings from 6 until 9 where we were allowed out to go and exercise. And we could only stay within a 5-kilometer radius of your home. And I stumbled upon this thing called Guinness World Records. And I thought, now what can I do in 3 hours? I can't run a marathon because I'm not fast enough. My average marathon time is probably somewhere between 3 hours 30, 3 hours 45, but I can run half marathons. So I applied to do a new Guinness World Record attempt for running the most consecutive half marathons by a female runner. At that point in time, the record was set at 50. So I thought, fine, if I start on September the 22nd of 2020, which is World Rhino Day, and I do, let's say, 86 of them or however many, I will finish at whatever time. Well, lo and behold, my application was hardly accepted, and I got an email from them saying that, oh, by the way, the new record is now 75. So I had to adjust the goalposts again.
Right.
No sooner had I done that, and I received a phone call from a friend of mine, and she said to me, oh, by the way, have you heard of this lady in South Africa, in Durban, Trish Eckstein? Now, Trish is actually quite an athlete. I'm a plodder. Trish is an athlete, a real athlete. So Ricky says to me, have you heard of Trish? She's doing 100 consecutive half marathons.
Right.
And I'm thinking, this cannot be true. This cannot be right. So I promptly send her a friend request on Facebook. She accepted. I then send her a direct message and said, Trish, so here's the thing. We can run half marathons for the rest of our lives, or you can do your 100. Hers was not an official Guinness World Record. And I will do 101 because that takes me to the 31st of December of 2020. And we can call it quits. So she emailed me back or sent me a Facebook message back. You go and save those beautiful animals. I am not running more than 100 half marathons, even if you paid me. So that was settled. And she kept her word. But then obviously, on the 31st of December, we had a massive hype. We had the local South African national television station come out, cover my last run live on television. And then I decided on the spur of the moment that I need to go out and do one more half marathon on the 1st of January of 2021, just to prove to myself that when there's no cameras, no hype, no people running with me, it's just me and the road, I can do one more,
Yeah.
And that's what I did. And that's how we ended up with 102 consecutive half marathons.
Right. Is that now the Guinness World Record?
So that was back then. But while I was busy with my attempt, a lady from Wales, Helen River, started her Guinness World Record, and she ran 111.
Oh, no.
And that was the new, that's right. And that was the new record. And that's fine because for me.
But you got to hold it for a little while.
I got to hold it for a couple of months, actually.
Yeah, nice.
So the record was mine for about 5 months.
Well, hey, not many of us have had a world record period, and you had one for 5 months. That's not bad.
Oh, absolutely. And I pioneered this massive movement of running consecutive half marathons around the world because another gent by the name of Micah Shivett in the USA actually did 1,078 consecutive half marathons. And since then, another two gents have done it. And then Helen decided that she wants to do another Guinness World Record. She was going to go for 555. And then Micah encouraged her to actually do 1,000. So
Wow.
both the male and the female record now is at 1,000. Actually, the males are a little bit more. But
Wow.
yes, quite a few people have started running these consecutive half marathons and have just taken it to the next level. I was
Yeah,
just the
really.
original mad person that sparked this whole movement worldwide.
How did you tie this in to then actually have an impact on rhinos and conservation?
So obviously with the 2020 runs, there was quite a massive Facebook campaign. I got a lot of media attention because of the runs during lockdown
Yeah.
and basically defying the odds. I have this thing where I always say I'm the luckiest person I know. I'm always in the right place at the right time. I live in abundant flow. And the world needed, in inverted commas, a hero. And I stepped up to the plate. So I got international television coverage, radio interviews, newspapers, you name it. So the word about the plight of the rhinos really made it around the globe, which was fantastic. I did not raise a massive sum of money, only about 46,000 Rand, which during COVID was fantastic. And part of the campaign was also bringing foot traffic to various small and medium enterprises. So the business owner would put up a special. If it was a coffee shop, it would be a cake and coffee special. And we would invite people to come and join, or come and have a piece of cake and have a cup of coffee and cheer as crazies running, loops around these shops or these small and medium enterprises. And then from there, as the lockdown levels relaxed, my next running expedition, which was in 2021, then basically paid homage to the people, the rangers on the ground that elected to leave their families and stay behind in the reserves, protecting those animals. And with a lot of the reserve, it was a small running expedition, small meaning I only did the Eastern Cape because then our borders were closed between provinces, then they reopened, and I didn't want to be caught in a province miles away from my home and not be able to come back,
Yeah.
So I kept it local in the Eastern Cape and only included 11 of the reserves that I had a good working relationship with. And with each of the reserves, or many of them, some of the rangers and the anti-poaching dogs actually ran with me, which was very emotional and very special. And just to see how these guys appreciated the fact that someone recognized the work that they do, which is such an important work. And sometimes, because it's behind the scenes, you don't often, as a guest at a game reserve, see them hard at work. They work behind the scenes. They work in the shadows, protecting the animals. And just to be recognized and for them to be made to feel special and to give a genuine, heartfelt thank you to them was really just amazing. That little running expedition also got a little bit of exposure, not as much as the 2020 runs, and also not as much as the 2022 run, which was the big expedition that I started planning back in 2018 before falling on my face in COVID, trapping us in our homes.
So tell us about the 2022 run.
That was just absolutely epic. So that was done in tandem with Wayne Bolton from the One Land Love It Foundation. So Wayne cycled from Namibia, which is a neighboring country to South Africa, across the Namibian border into South Africa, finished on World Rhino Day at a local monument and park here called the Donkin. And I basically took over the baton and then ran from Port Elizabeth, my hometown, across 3 provinces and finished at the Lebombo border post between South Africa and Mozambique, where we know a lot of our rhino horn exits the country. So It was just absolutely amazing. I included 28 big five game reserves, ran to them, ran through them, ran the entire length of the Wild Coast, which is just breathtakingly beautiful. Literally picked victims along the road that I interviewed about rhino conservation, just testing people's knowledge about rhinos. Do they know about the poaching crisis? Do they know that rhino horn is actually nothing more than keratin, the same substance our fingernails are made of? Had some epic conversations with people in my most vulnerable form, which is on foot. And it was just absolutely amazing. There were some controversy. We got fined for me having an expired license. I had a really bad fall. But you know what? In the end, it all worked out beautifully. And then when I finished at the Lubombo border post, I did a Facebook Live where I tagged the president and the government of South Africa and the president and the government of Mozambique doing a massive appeal to strengthen border controls at that border post. Whether it was effective, I cannot gauge, but, it was something that I felt that I needed to do. And I still distinctly remember having a conversation with a lodge owner from that same area in the Kruger. And he said to me that if you look across the border, you can see there's double-story homes and then there's normal homes. And those big double-story homes are actually homes of the kingpin poachers. And he said to me, these guys will shoot you. And my reply was simple. I said to him, Matthew, if that's how I meet my end, I'll be happy to do that. Because that is how strong I feel about my mission, which is to contribute to preserving these amazing animals for future generations to come. It is just something that I feel that strong about. And when I do my talks, I actually bring conservation and looking after ecosystems into the skill set that a strong leader should have. Because I just
and they're that obvious, like they have the double-decker houses, everyone knows they're there, and they get away with this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Unfortunately, living in Africa and working with African countries, very often your police service is actually on the payroll of these hardcore criminals, because these are not your normal run-of-the-mill person at ground zero level that is desperate for the money. These are criminals, part of organized syndicates, and they operate on a whole different level. And they
and
actually
this is just
really
one part of their whole crime empire.
Absolutely. And if you trace these links, they go into drug trafficking, human trafficking, obviously illegal trade in animal parts, gun smuggling. The rap sheets are quite impressive and not in a good way.
Yeah, right. Let's go to the funner part about your run. I can imagine running through the game reserves. I mean, that could have been very dangerous. I mean, there are predators out there. How did you look at that?
Okay, so the fun thing is, and I love mentioning this, like everybody always asks me, are you not worried or scared running through a big 5 game reserve? And the short answer is no, because animals don't drive cars, okay? Fear humans behind car steering wheels way more than I fear wild animals, to be honest. But obviously, my route was plotted out long before I even started the expedition. And the first thing that I do always is establish where are these reserves? What route am I running to get there? Because there's implications, there's legal implications running on national roads. So I stick to the back roads, dirt roads, which inevitably makes the expedition slightly longer, which is fine. And then all of those game reserves, I engage in dialogue with them long before I even take my first step. So everything is predetermined. I know which days I'm going to be there, what their rules and regulations are. I always have a vehicle with an armed ranger with me. And if they tell me I can do X, Y, and Z, that is what I stick to. I don't
Right.
argue with game
You don't
reserve
go
management.
off-road and go swimming with the alligators.
No, not at all. And if they
Alright.
tell me to get on the back of that vehicle, for whatever reason, I don't stand there and argue. I climb on the vehicle
Right.
because then I know there's either a
Yeah.
predator or something is going down.
Yeah.
So you stick to
Something
the
that you're
rules.
not seeing, they're seeing, and they're keeping you safe.
Absolutely.
So did you have any fun running with any animals during these runs?
Yes, absolutely. At Founders Lodge here in Port Elizabeth, well, just outside Port Elizabeth, I had a grouping, a little crash of 3 rhinos actually running alongside myself and Paul Gardner, which was fantastic. These
Yeah.
rhinos are very habituated. It's more like a rhino sanctuary than a reserve. But they just decided, well, this looks like fun. We're going to join in. And they ran probably at least 500 meters with us and
Oh.
then just veered off back into the bush. And that was that. So that was quite fun. And
Yeah.
I didn't feel threatened in any way.
That must have been an intimidating moment, though. Those are big animals running next to you.
They are huge. But as I mentioned, these specific rhinos are actually quite laid back, very chilled, very calm. They do get a lot of supplementary feeding because, you know, we're still in the midst of one of the worst droughts ever. So a lot of the reserves are actually feeding their animals right now, supplementary feeding them. So
Right.
they're quite used to the vehicles, and they kind of associate those vehicles with food. So when they see something's going down, they're like, oh, okay, maybe we're going to get food again. But that was quite fun.
And they see
And
you
then
running away, and they're like, "Hello, you're supposed to be feeding me. We're here. Why are you leaving?"
absolutely like, we here, guys, don't run, we here.
Oh, that's awesome. So if someone else wanted to organize and have an impact for rhinos or whatever cause they're passionate about, how would they go about doing something like what you've done, like a charity run that way?
You know, it all depends on what I would always say to people. First and foremost, figure out what are your talents. You know, some people sew or knit blankets for baby rhinos. I can't knit to save my life. I can run, you know. I know that there's some performing artists that will donate a portion of their appearance fee, or they will appear or do a concert for free. So it really pertains to what are your unique talents? What can you do? As we always say to people, what is the talent that you have in your hands that you can use to either create awareness or raise funds? Because obviously, being in South Africa, that evil thing called an exchange rate, our rands don't quite go as far as dollars and euros.
Right.
So we're forever looking at outside people that can, you know, or donors that
Yeah.
can donate. So, for instance, my next big thing that I'm planning is, and hopefully I can pull this off, is to participate in the Great World Race, which is the 7 marathons on 7 continents in 7 days.
Oh,
You know,
wow.
which is an organized race, but through that, again, elevate the plight of the rhinos to the next level.
And
Because
so how do you, if you go and compete in a race like that, how do you build the attention around it? Because, it's not a TV sport as if you're playing, one of the major sports. How do you create that attention?
so I would literally then, as an individual, reach out to various media houses, your television stations, your social media. Social media is something that can, you know, really create a big hype if it's
Yeah.
used correctly for the
Right.
right reasons. Um, with the Great World Race, for instance, you do have a videographer and a photographer that travels with a group and that captures some of these images and videos. And they get massive publicity for the Great World Race. So that would be something potentially that I would then piggyback on. But
Right. And
obviously,
but you'd also do your own basically media blitz and work with
absolutely.
PR yourself.
Yes, 100%. You know, you have to actively drive these things. And I think that's where a lot of good work kind of falls through the cracks because people are scared to put themselves out there for the fear that people are going to think that, you seek attention or
Yeah.
you're doing it for ulterior motives. Well, I do have a very big ulterior motive because each of those animals weigh about 2 tons.
Yeah. So tell
So
us
you just
about
need to
the
create as much hype as you can.
Yeah. This what I wanted to ask, and is anyone who's been out running, when you get to a certain distance, you hit a wall, and it's continuing is awful. And going day after day, you're going to be facing that wall on a consistent basis. How do you handle that when the body says, "No, I'm done. This is enough," but you weren't done with your mission? How did you get yourself to just keep pushing day after day?
You know, the interesting thing is that once you've made that decision, once you've crossed those mental barriers, and I've already gone through this whole route in my mind. In my mind, I'm already standing at the Labambo border post, with my hand in the air going, I did this, I've made it. And then it's just the physical body that needs to follow. And I always maintain you can't do something like that just for you. There's got to be a bigger picture. There's got to be a bigger why, a bigger reason why you do it, because that keeps you going when the motivation fades away. And trust me, it does. I don't get up every day feeling like I want to run. There are days when I'm going, do I really have to do this today? Do I actually have to put my running shoes on and get my butt out there and hit the road? But the trick is to take that first step, even if it's a wobbly one, even if the first 500 steps are wobbly, but you've got to make it on foot from this point to the next point where you can take those running shoes off and soak in somebody's swimming pool for a bit. But it
Well, and I
really
think
is
what's
not
interesting
motivation.
too,
It's discipline.
yeah, I think what's interesting too is, a lot of people might look at this and go, well, if that was all you did that day, then it's not so bad. You go up, run 20 plus kilometers, and then you just rest the rest of the day and recover, and then you go and do that again. But this isn't a full-time, this is the full-time salaried gig. You do other things as well. So you can't just go into full-time recovery mode. So tell us about that.
Absolutely.
What do you do when you're not, running for Rhinos? And how did you juggle, exhausting yourself in the morning and then actually having to do these other things?
Again, excuse me, again, it is all about the mindset. When your mind is in the right place, I believe you can do anything. Really, doing these running expeditions while running a business and having to catch up with your administrative work on the days when you're sitting and it's hot, you're sweating, you're sore, you feel sorry for yourself, you have a few blisters on your feet. Now you've got to open up your laptop and you've got to work. It is a mindset. It is discipline. It is the daily discipline grind. Because let's face it, we don't always feel like going out and running, right? It's the same with a running expedition. You don't always feel like going out there and running. And now I get to my destination. I've just run 50 Ks up the mountains, down the mountains, through the valleys, the mountain passes. And now I've got to open up my laptop and I've got to start sending emails. So you've got to make that mental switch into work mode again. It is hard. It's not easy. It is not something that I would recommend people do, but it certainly taught me so much about myself and about how you can push boundaries and push limits and how ordinary people can do extraordinary things when you just put your mind to it. But you've got to be prepared mentally that this is not going to be easy. It's not going to be an easy ride or a run. And real life have to continue. And in between, we have to post on social media because people want to know, where are you today? What have you done today? Who are you promoting today? So it really is that discipline and having your predetermined actions and sticking to your action plan, and then also having to be able to adapt should something happen, like tripping and falling flat on your face.
Tell me about your business. What is it you do when you're not running?
So I teach people how to become an athlete of the mind. And it's all about leadership training. It is about getting to know yourself, getting to know, I'm a firm believer that if you don't know who you are at your core and what drives you, how can you possibly know what your purpose is on this planet in this lifetime? If you don't know you and you don't know where you're at in your life, you can't possibly know where you're wanting to go from here. So that is basically what I help people to do.
And so what is an athlete of the mind for a normal person? What would it mean for me to be an athlete of the mind?
So that would mean taking the principles and the disciplines of the elite athlete and applying it to your life and to your business. Because there's certain lessons that you learn as an athlete that you can apply across board in terms of your discipline, in terms of your training plan, which for us, a business person, would be your goal setting, right? And how to take criticism, like the coach will give the athlete feedback. You need to be able to take that constructive criticism and apply it to your goal setting and to the way that you operate so that you can become better and that you can grow and expand as a person. And then the discipline, the daily grind, because let's face it, it's not motivation that keeps us going. Motivation comes, motivation goes. What motivates you today will not motivate you tomorrow. But if you have a really, really strong discipline instilled in your daily life, that will take you to the next level and the next level and beyond what you thought was possible for you.
Nice. I like it. We wrap up every episode with our rapid fire round. So I'm going to ask you 5 questions that the team has prepared. You just answer the first thing that comes to mind. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. First question. What is one thing people misunderstand about mental toughness?
Okay, so for me, most people believe that when you acquire mental toughness, your work is done. That is a myth. That's not true. It is always work in progress because practice only makes you better. It doesn't make you perfect.
That's a good one. That's a good one. What is the scariest moment you've had on the road?
Ooh, I think definitely when I fell flat on my face outside Empangeni and literally had my hands, my chin, my elbows, my knees ripped to pieces, and then having to get up, dust myself off, bleeding all over the place, and I had to get back to my support vehicle. Definitely one of the scariest moments for me.
Yeah. I'm feeling my pain from that. And like I said, I had to drag myself like 50 meters and I cannot imagine what you went through. That is powerful. All right. So what is one habit that keeps you consistent when motivation disappears?
Hardcore discipline. That is the key to everything. It means doing the right thing consistently because it is the right thing to do even when nobody's watching.
Yeah, we've heard that from multiple interviews. That's what the top performers. I interviewed Marquise Ogden, who's a former NFL tackle, and he said the same thing. It's what are you doing when no one is telling you to do it?
Absolutely.
All right, what is one peak performance myth that you'd retire today?
The one thing that I would love to retire right now, today, is the myth that to be a peak performer, you have to be busy 24/7 because it's really not about that. Okay. You have to be smart, you have to be effective, and you have to focus on the 20% of actions that will bring you 80% of your results and not just be busy.
We actually had a webinar last night with Joseph McClendon, and at the end we did a Q&A, and it was one of the attendees, absolute superstar, running a business, and has said like he's working so hard. He's, he only has time to sleep 3 hours a night and, really pushing himself. And it's like, what is one thing I can do better? And it was really like, just get your 8 hours of sleep. That's
100%. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I like that because that is one thing so many coaches or, supposed peak performance coaches talk about is you should be busy, but that isn't the key, is it? It's doing the right
Not at
things and taking
all.
care of yourself. I like it.
Absolutely.
So what is a line you'd put on a billboard about ordinary people doing hard things?
You know what? I am a firm believer that every person, each and every one of us, have that special thing. And now I'm going to come back to my very first P that I teach, which is your person and your purpose. Okay. It's about knowing yourself, understanding how your mind works. There's something so powerful in that. And once you uncover that, you create that ability within yourself as an ordinary person to do those extraordinary things.
Awesome. So we always like to spoil our listeners, and I know you've prepared something special for them. So how can we connect with you and continue to learn and follow your journey?
Fantastic. Yes, I have got my 7 P's of peak performance 7-day starter manual that I would love to offer your listeners or your viewers. And I call it the Badass Edition because that will take you from where you are to becoming this really badass person and achieve your dreams, whatever those might be. And the easiest way for them to get hold of that manual is to just email me on sharon@sharonjessop.com. Very easy.
Awesome. And we'll add that email address to the show notes so it's easy to copy and paste. Sharon, thank you so much for joining us. Do you have any final words of wisdom you want to leave us with?
Oh, absolutely. Again, and I'm going to reiterate this, learn to know yourself. That is the biggest and best friendship that you will ever develop because you're spending all your time, 100% of it, with you. Get to know yourself. Once you know yourself, you will know your purpose, and that will unlock everything extraordinary.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, Sharon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It was fantastic.
Thank you so much for joining us on the interview with Sharon Jessop. It's time for my favorite segment of the show, where the Swedish Wealth Institute team and I have broken down the interview to give you clear takeaways that you can implement straight away into your life. So here at the Swedish Wealth Institute, we're looking for the answer for one simple question. What is the difference that makes the difference? Here are our 5 key takeaways from this episode that you can implement directly into your life. Number 1. Your mission doesn't need more ideas. It needs your specific talent. Sharon didn't try to do everything. She asked one question: what do I personally do well that can actually make a difference? She used her strengths, running and communication, to create awareness, momentum, and finally impact. Number 2, motivation is unreliable. Discipline is undefeated. She said it clearly: motivation comes and goes. Discipline is what carries you when you don't feel like it. The real skill is taking the first step anyway, even when it's wobbly, even when you're tired, even when nobody is watching. Big results come from a bigger why. This is our number 3, not a bigger ego. The reason she could keep going day after day wasn't willpower, it was meaning. It was a reason. It was her why. When your mission is bigger than your comfort, quitting stops being an option. Number 4, setbacks don't require drama. They require adaptation. So injuries happen, lockdowns happen, heat spikes, bad days. She didn't pretend it was easy. She just did the plan, protected the mission, and kept on moving. That's what high performance actually looks like in real life. Staying committed while staying flexible. 5, peak performers don't stay busy, they stay effective. One of the biggest myths that she called out was that peak performance means grinding 24/7. It doesn't. The truth is focus. The 20% of the actions that produce 80% of results are the ones you should be focusing on. Do that consistently and you will win. So thank you again for joining us. Before I leave you, I want to spoil you one last time here with a gift from us. I want to give you a ticket to our upcoming Financial Freedom Summit in April. We have two options, one targeting the North American time zone and one for the European and all the way down to African time zone. So you'll get to learn directly from world-class speakers. That includes Robert Kiyosaki, Les Brown, Nick Vujicic, Brian Tracy, Marcy Shimoff, Jack Canfield, Janet Atwood, and more. I want to give you a free ticket to these events. You can go to the SwedishWealthInstitute.com/events. You can see that down in the show notes to claim your free ticket. Make sure you do that right now so that you don't miss out on one of these free seats. Before you go, let me remind you, if you enjoyed this episode, please follow and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next, because next week is really, really cool. And if you know someone that feels like this, that you think might fit this episode, maybe they need more discipline, maybe they need more focus, maybe they need a bigger why, and maybe they need some extra support in what they're building, please share this episode with them. And if you did like this episode, please give us a 5-star review. It really makes a difference for us in getting the word out to more people. Next week, we have an absolutely amazing episode for you. We are featuring Arthur Samuel Joseph. He's trained speakers like Tony Robbins. 20% of the NFL first ballot Hall of Famers were his students. Sports athletes from many other sports, and superstar entrepreneurs, business leaders, and speakers like Tony Robbins. So if you want to learn from him directly, how to command a room, how to influence others with your voice, and how to communicate like a true leader, you don't want to miss the next episode. I'm Daniel Wood. This is the Swedish Wealth Institute Podcast. Thank you for joining us.
It's one thing to have a stellar career, to make it for, but then to become a Hall of Famer, then to become a first ballot. They may not be the most talented or the most gifted, but no one will ever outwork them, and no one will sustain it over time longer than them. Sociologists have fed us this empty bill of goods for decades that the greatest fear in society is public speaking. The greatest fear in society are actually two fears: fear of abandonment and ownership of my power. Claiming myself and not being afraid of what you think of me while I'm being me.